How is Soul Calibur and its universe impacted by dimensions, multiverses, timelines, and such? Part 2. Hey, what's up guys, it's Mark Yoon, and today I bring another hopefully exciting video. So yesterday in part 1 we actually talked about timelines and how they affect and branch from each other and diverge from each other, and how one timeline is not related to another and cannot affect another. And today we're going to be talking about parallel universes and multiverse theories and things of that nature. Now I already talked about differences between colloquialisms and the scientific understanding, so we're going to do that again here. Usually in science, if you want to talk about what a dimension is simply a measure of distance in a nominal direction to that of our knowledge, extended indefinitely. In our universes, we have 3 spaces of one time that we have discovered so far, and that is multi-dimensional. So that was what you would say by 3D, or a 3D space, right? Or 4D, including other things. But we've only discovered 3 dimensions so far. There's hypotheses as many as 10 dimensions, but that's neither here nor there. That's scientifically. Now, when we're talking about it colloquially, or how it relates to fiction, usually a dimension means like another plane of existence. So it would be something akin to limbo would be another dimension that exists within our dimension, parallel to our dimension. It is part of the same universe, part of the same time space, maybe outside of time space, but part of the same structure. It's part of the same closed system, and it'll be something that you can actually go to if you know how to get there. That would be like a dimension in colloquial usage or in fiction. Now, this is akin to Soul Calibur for the same reason why I talked about timelines yesterday, because a lot of people get these theories confused, and I can understand why, because they're so shoestring difference of like how things actually come to be, that I don't blame anybody at all for thinking a little bit differently when it comes to how these arise or how these get here. So we had a timeline being a linear line that branches based on decisions and based on everything, really, not even just decisions or actions. So we have a constant branch, so it would look like a point, and then it constantly branching out into like several branched trees, to where like they're all running parallel to each other, and they all exist, and they're all legitimate, and they all are happening at the same time. When it comes to dimensions, this would be that, and then that theory exactly next to each other. So the dimension would be that this is happening in this branched timeline, and then you have another starting point branched timeline in which they coexist together, but you can't get to each other because they're not equal. So a dimension used usually in, let's say in fiction would be, let's look at Marvel. So we have Mephisto's realm, right? Which is basically the alliteration of hell in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Marvel comic universe as well. This is a place that you can get to. You'll have your body, you'll exist there, same as you would exist in this plane of existence. And that's not exactly how it is scientifically, but fictionally, like that's how it's another place that exists within the same place. So think about a one of those like little Russian dolls where you take off the head and it keeps getting smaller inside, the Russian nesting dolls, I believe they're called. That would be how dimensions are used within fiction. So within like Soul Calibur, instead of having another timeline that exists next to it, you would have the Russian nesting doll from the old time comes off, leading to the events that comes in here, so on and so forth. This is not likely to happen. I think the first video is the one that's most likely to be what they're doing, if they understand it, because obviously they're not scientists, these are just writers that are writing a fictional story. So they're going to be taking a lot of like colloquialisms and ideas that the general populace has based on dimensions and all these things to tell a story. So I get that, they're not going to be. But common knowledge things like pairings and like, you know, like randomization and stuff like that is obviously going to take place, because that's how they re-roll the dice and retell the story that they want to tell that's separate from the past one. So how is this different dimensionally speaking from timeline speaking? Well, if you're talking about Soul Calibur, the previous timeline, like Soul Calibur 1 through 5, and then now we have Soul Calibur 6, it would look like this. You'd have a line, you'd have Soul Edge and Soul Blade in the beginning. That's the action point. Then you would have the line branching off, going into the new timeline, which is Soul Calibur 6. So everything that happened in Soul Calibur 1 through 5 does not happen in this timeline, only what happened prior to the action point, or plank time. The action point is what actually is going to be the main canon leading into the new change. So how this is different from dimensions would be, if some people mention this as like a dimension, this would be like Cassandra coming through the astral chaos, so saying that like she jumped over from another dimension, right? That's not exactly entirely true. The way that chaos works is that it can't be mathematically predicted. So something like astral chaos, I believe, is like, if it comes to real world, would be like antimatter or like dark matter, and that exists underneath of matter or alongside matter. Pretty much the energy and like creation of black holes and stuff like that. It's really hard to get into all of that in a little 10-minute video, but Cassandra, the way that people talk about it is like she jumped over from another dimension, so now she's in this dimension, which isn't entirely true. She is actually from an entirely different parallel timeline, which means that Soul Calibur 1 through 5 happened and kept going forward, or ended, whichever it is, and then a Soul Calibur 6 timeline happens next to it, alongside of it, or on top or below it, and goes on to its own thing, which just means that she ended up in the wrong space and time. Now I can see how some people would think that that is a dimension, but it is not. It is a timeline. They are two different things. They don't exist together within each other. They're just like a structure, which is why I always get really upset when people like use the colloquial terms for things instead of the scientific or academic terms for things, which I can understand why people would do that, because there's nobody's gonna know everything about this stuff, right? It's like insane if you're gonna like blow your mind if like you're literally trying to concentrate on every minute detail of minutia of every little thing that goes on. We just want to play the game and hack swords at each other, right? So while it is different, it can be descriptive still. So you can talk about Cassandra moving over to this timeline by accident in the astral chaos. Who knows how long she was actually in there, which is a third line of time, or never getting back to that point in time because things have changed. This goes into like parallel universes and stuff, and I'm doing my best to try and explain this as easily as possible. Obviously there's going to be questions, so like I'm free to answer any of them, or if any of you know more about quantum relativity or quantum physics or anything of that nature, you can help in the comment section down below. But basically when we're talking about multiverses, which is, I'm going to touch on it here, we'll break it down in the next video. But when we're talking about multiverses, these are like universes that exist, coincide alongside each other. This also goes into string theory, so you'd have like certain actions causing entirely new universes to be born, not just new timelines within the same closed universe. You can look at it as convergence or non-full integration, or like start with a spheroid, which would be Earth, and do the same thing with the timeline. You just have the one Earth and then branching off into two different Earths, except do this with the entire universe. So obviously each one is going to be completely separate and divergent and different from each other, and given the main structural factor being time, things could work completely different. The laws of physics can be different. The way things converged or assimilated could be different. In one multi-universe, like there might not even be an Earth. In another multi-universe, Earth was destroyed. In another multi-universe, like Earth was a little bit further away from the sun and couldn't produce life. There's like an infinite amount of possibilities that can happen when you're talking about it through scientific lenses. When you're talking about it through fictional lenses and you're trying to tell a story, everything looks the same. Whether you're talking about dimensions or multiversal theory or string theory, or you're talking about timelines, or you're talking about anything like that, it all literally sounds exactly the same, because it's just a description of the event, and it's a light description at that. So everything that you actually see going forward from that, this is why we can get into a little bit of debate and articles and arguments when it comes to talking about this stuff. Like if you tell me that like Cassandra came over from another dimension, you're pretty much meaning the exact same thing as when I say she's coming from an alternate timeline. When it comes to colloquialisms, they mean pretty much the same thing. Like let's talk about, like, for example, Dragon Ball, right? You guys can tell I'm a huge Dragon Ball fan, right? So we have the original timeline of Dragon Ball, which goes from the events of Dragon Ball up through the Majin Buu saga. And then we have two converging timelines. We have the events of GT, in which completely separate things happen, like Goku attaining Super Saiyan 4, a lot of different things actually happening differently. And then we have like the timeline of Super, which is now like converging with parts of the timeline of GT when it comes, because not everything's in this stupid 8 years, I don't care what they say. So both of them are equally co-equal when it comes to whether it actually happened or not, but different things happen because of different events happening at different times, right? So Goku doesn't have Super Saiyan 4 in Dragon Ball Super. He has Super Saiyan Blue and Super Saiyan God and Super Saiyan Kaioken God and Ultra Instinct and Mastered Ultra Instinct and whatever else. Ultra Ego for Vegeta. Like, things are, it's not the same, right? So what I wanted to do these videos for is because a lot of people get these confused and argue about it, and I want to say that you don't have to. Like, as long as we understand what we're talking about, that's all that really matters. Like, I mean, like, we're just talking about the same thing, so colloquially, whether we're talking about timelines or dimensions or parallel universes or anything akin to that, as long as we're talking about the subject in the proper way, then like it doesn't really matter like what descriptor we're using of the events that are actually happening, if that makes any sense. I know a lot of you are probably like, these videos are boring because it's like not talking about stuff that anyone really cares about. It's just like talking about different ideas of how science is applied to these fictional stories like games. But we're going to bring this second video to a close, and in the third video we're going to overall discuss how this affects Soul Calibur in general. We touched on it a little bit in the first video, but I want to get more in depth in it in the last video for Friday, so thank you for staying with me. Any and all thoughts are always welcome in the comment section down below, guys. Let's start a conversation and let's discuss what we each think about this. So, as I always say, I love it, thank you,
and thank you.